Cool. All right. It's almost it's good afternoon. Yes. We had a title, we had an abstract, and then there was no paper. Or as Woody Allen would say, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. So we had a good idea of writing it, but it never happened. But instead, basically, invited me to tell the story. And that's what I'd like to tell you. I'm going to tell you a story. I won't be making any point. Maybe I won't be making any sense, but I won't be making any point. This is a story. So I'm not presenting a theory. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm just going to tell a story. I'm going to let you see a slide that I use often. It's a funny warning. It might sound strangely simple, and it can have long-lasting positive effects. Now, elements of this story, it's going to be a story a little bit about complexity and me, our relationship together. It's going to explain why I'm standing here. It has also something to do with white, and a weird expression on his face last year in Bangladesh. There's going to be something about SFBT stuff, solution-focused brief therapy. It includes another doctor. There's going to be a story about an experiment, because basically I'm going to tell you about a little experiment I did with 6 planners and solution-focused brief therapy. I'm going to give you a hint of what they reported back to me a year later, or almost a year later, and I'm going to give you some takeaways. Yes, there's going to be room for questions. Voila, that's all. Hi. Okay, my name is Hans. I'm not a planner. I run a company called Superbly Human. It has 1 employee, which is standing here. Who is standing here? I'm also the founder of That Reminds Me of a Story, which is an open source practice to cultivate local wisdom through stories. If you want to know more about that, you can ask later. I consider myself to be either a local wisdom cultivator or a professional jester. Do you know what a jester is? The funny person in court? Okay. That's basically what I do. But what I do, if you look at what I really do, I do this. I ask questions, I listen, and I ask questions. So I do this for a living. I was trained as a philologist a couple of meters away from here. Like I graduated here like almost 15 years ago. English, Dutch literature, linguistics. Trained as a journalist, and then later on as a solution-focused brief therapist. I've been asking these questions, listening. I've been doing that listening in class as a kid. I know my teachers. I've got 1 math teacher who limited me to 3 questions per class. I did it for national radio, where I conducted research, organizational development, social marketing campaigns on biodiversity. I work with drug addicts, so Robert Geyer's story of the lady coming in, that's kind of the interface where I deal with stuff. In engineering companies and in urban planning, yesterday in the workshop. For me it was also new, but apparently the workshop that we built there set the model for how they develop their urban planning projects. So that was cool to hear. But that's basically what I do. How did I end up doing that kind of stuff? It has something to do with that. Can you see it? Yes. Basically, it has also something to do with that. You can also see this. This is Hanoi. Never been there. Yeah, but if you're on top of the Arc de Triomphe in Paris and you look down for half an hour, it's very similar. And it has definitely something to do with that. I found out that I wanted to live happily in a world I don't understand. It's a very natural thing to do. But which becomes really hard if you're also really interested in the pattern that connects. Because then you also always see new connections, and then you see that you cannot understand it. So how to deal with that has been quite my lifelong quest. Now I thought I would find some answers in university, but instead I got more questions, because if I wanted to study living stuff, they said I should study it this way. Literally, we were studying postmodern literature, looking for connections all over the place, in a building that was organized as a 19th century natural history museum, which is basically taking this stuff apart to better understand it. To make it more specific, I got so frustrated that everyone was complaining about why literature didn't matter anymore, but no one was organizing a conference where they would invite mathematicians, civil engineers, you name it, to discuss literature, and the other way around. They didn't get invited to discuss whatever other worldly topics. But there was one exception. At the time I started studying here, we had the Ghent Urban Study Team, GUST, and it consisted of an interdisciplinary team, but it was vanished by the time I even would have the chance to get in touch with them.
Still there?
What?
It's still there.
Well, it's still there, but it's under the radar. Now it's re-emerging in Antwerp. They are re-emerging such a group. One of the members in the Antwerp group is actually one of the members here, and one of my literature teachers. Now, this problem continued later on in life. Wherever I looked, I started to see that I was supposed to understand this kind of stuff, and the above one is my eldest daughter. And I was told to understand it in such a way. Yeah. It sounds completely absurd, but if I listened to the way people talked about how to handle this stuff, it was about this stuff. Yeah, we need something from the outside to control, blah, blah, blah. Whereas it was completely impossible. At one point in my life, I actually had a breakdown because of this. I was working as a copywriter in a social marketing agency, where we were selling magical creative solutions to unimaginably complex questions, such as give me a communications campaign that enables us to get more people to sign up for foster care as a foster parent. Which sounds like a simple question, but it's ridiculously absurd. To imagine or to assume that I, as a copywriter, could come up with a very creative concept, then put it in the hands of these people and, well, let the magic happen. On top of that, we sold all that stuff, like all our peers in this sector, with brilliant models, and I was including nudging, behavioral economics. But the problem was I was seriously interested in that matter, and when you become seriously interested in a matter, you cannot lie anymore to a certain extent. But we didn't have the resources to research this, and apparently no one actually did. So I had a breakdown because I didn't know where to go. Physically I was stuck, mentally I was stuck, and I ran into a guy, coincidence, called Anton Stellemans, who coached me, and while being in the coaching process, I was just telling him, hey, what this guy is doing to me is exactly what I need. You're asking me questions, and I'm figuring out what to do by the means that I have, my knowledge, but also my environment, and I'm molding my own solutions. What I want to do is, instead of giving my clients an answer, I want to ask them better questions so they become smarter about what they already know. It's local wisdom. They have it. And if they then have specific technical questions, then we can help them right away. Yeah, then we can really tell them, okay, yes, that particular bit we can really help you with. I discovered solution-focused abuse therapy. Well, I didn't discover it, I discovered it was there, and it enables therapists to facilitate progress in the face of complexity. Remember Robert Guyer's story. Enables clients to make progress in the face of complexity. Because your life is complex. Remember raising the hands? I mean, you can do this. I'm going to say a little bit about what this SMBT stuff is all about. I'm still studying it, so it's basically about this. Stuff in between. I hear you talking a lot about actors and networks. I don't talk about that stuff. I look at interactions. Here's a good thing. This is one quote and let it sink in. Solution-focused brief therapy began with the discovery that nobody is perfect. That's a blessing. The new slant on this very old knowledge was that being human, we cannot even do our problems perfectly. However chronic, serious, debilitating, or complex they are, there are always times when they are less debilitating, less influential on our actions. And then the question becomes, when the problem is less happening, what's happening instead? It's a simple thing, but it has very dramatic consequences. Yes? One of them is this. Change is happening all the time. We only need to look at the change that is useful and amplify it. Another one is this. Utilize what's there And forget about looking for a cause that's underlying behind the problem. It's not necessary anymore. You don't need that. If you look at the change that's already happening that's beneficial and enhance that, you're doing much more interesting stuff. These are the founding father and mother of that movement. That's their algorithm. First, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Think back of a project where you ask that as a first question. Second question, find out what works and do more of it. And if it ain't working, stop and try and do something else. Usually it's the last question that gets the most interest. What's not working? And we forget about everything else. Recent development, it's no longer called focused solution development, it's called focused description development. Because basically what I'm in the act of doing while asking questions is elicit descriptions from people, not to understand them, but to give them a space to elicit descriptions that make it possible for them to make something they call progress. Not what I think is progress, but what they call progress. The focus is on description rather than on explanation. So understanding is no longer an issue. Neither is convincing. And these are the main tools. If you want to know what solution-focused brief therapists do, basically we ask 3 questions. What are your best hopes from our work together, which is about your vision, your future end state? How will you know that these hopes are being realized? Which is about signs of progress. And what are you already doing that might contribute to your hopes being realized? It's as simple as that. Nothing else. As I said, it's about what happens between the noses, not between the ears. This guy gave me words for what I found interesting, is that solution-focused brief therapists take a very honest position towards their clients. They realize that their clients are the best experts in living their life. They spend way more time in living their life and their circumstances than they ever will. So I will never get the intricacies of their life. Therefore, I'm not the best expert to say what really works for them. I might have good ideas. And obviously they have a problem, so they don't know the answer. But I'm not the one to tell them this is going to work. So I found that a really interesting thing. Now, research in therapeutic research, and this is where the dodo comes in, actually proved this. In 1936, Saul Rosenberg organized some kind of a big battle of therapies to find out which therapy finally was the best one. They found out that basically all therapies work in a good way, which means that it's not about the technical specificity of the therapy that makes therapy work, it's about what they have in common, which is common factors. And this is where it gets interesting for us. Turns out that if things get solved, 86% of that can be contributed to client factors. What the client brings, what happens in their environment, what limitations they have. Perfect. Only 14% can be attributed to treatment. Of that treatment, if that's 100%, and you will notice the numbers won't add up, can be attributed to alliance effects. Do I feel like I am in a good alliance with you? Do I feel respected? Do I trust you? That kind of stuff. Do you ask me for my feedback as a client, and do you do something with it? That contributes a lot to the effects of therapy. The therapist effect, so what does the therapist bring as his or her background? Okay. Model technique, general effects. Applying a model or a technique and doing it in a consistent way builds trust, no matter what model or technique you're using, in such a way that it enhances the relationship, that you incorporate feedback, and so on. And then model technique specific effects, 7% of that 14%. So let this sink in. Next time someone comes and tells you they have found a magical model, yes, for that 7%, that's fine. Everything else is bullshit. Time's up. All right, then we go on with the experiment. Included 6 planners. I noticed planners have a lot of conversations when they're planning. Yes, if you would map them, it would be ridiculous. They talk about their stuff in this way, while they talk about this stuff, so they use one language, and I was making that assumption to what? That's when he looked very strangely at me. He couldn't grasp it, so I said, I won't convince him unless I do an experiment. So I invited 6 people from academia, public authorities, and planning agencies, and said to them, I won't tell you what the goal is of what we're going to do. I'm going to train you into something. I'm going to teach you something. And then I'm going to ask you questions. Outcomes. They noticed that they were assuming less and they were asking more. Questions like, what are your best hopes? What do you want instead? Very important question. Solution-focused therapists are very keen on when people say what they don't want. We ask immediately, what do you want instead? What do you want less? No, no, no. Not interested in that. What do you want more instead? What's already helping? How do you notice signs? And key question. They start asking, what else 100 times. They're not just satisfied with question, answer, that's it. They're lazier, so they think less. There's more co-creation. Yep, over time, perfect. Focus on making progress first, instead of solving the puzzle. They facilitate learning instead of simplifying complexity. They make use of what's already there. They use SF questions to create that context. And then finally this. In dealing with complexity, forget complexity and facilitate learning. Ask or observe more, think less. Our brain is not made for that. Look for what's in between. Imperfection is always a blessing. Progress, not perfection. The easiest way to keep things simple is to allow them to be complex. And basically, always remember that we aren't dead yet. Which means that we're still doing enough stuff right. And then the last one, I have a takeaway, is this one. In these contexts and in other contexts, we talk a lot about solutions. Solutions belong to the realm of the present, which means a thing is a solution if you can see it at work and if you know it works. Everything else that you call a solution that isn't that is either a hypothesis, an idea, a wish, or a memory. If we would be more distinct in using the word solutions, then a lot of these problems and this fuzziness that we meet in our work would disappear. So that's it. Thanks, Luc, for the patience.
5 minutes over. Okay, Mr. René.
Hannes, thank you for your very interesting story. I think it's always energizing to see cross-pollination with other studies. When you started, I got a little bit scared because you said I use this or encounter this a lot with drug addicts. So I thought, oh, are we a group of drug addicts now?
It's called habits. It's the same thing. It's just a habit that got out of hand. We're basically studying habits.
Okay. So this is maybe the technology. But yes, I think we can all relate to your margin point about dealing with knowing that as a planner we do not have this absolute control. This is the start point of the technical rationale. I think we've all very much recognized that it's also a reason for us to assert the complexity, and especially the swarm analogy is very prominent always in the self-organizing debate. So I think we can very much relate to it, but I think there also are some important differences, and I will stress two, and I hope that you can help us to see in how far these things are compatible to the planning domain. So the first thing what you said was, we were talking about this, and you showed the picture, and what we're using a language, and it's this, it's a linear perspective. And I think one of the main things planners are always trying to do is categorize circumstances and then differentiate. So in a sense we're asking the question about how should we interpret what we're encountering now. But then if you add these questions, and especially the questions you ask there, you are implying that the people who you are asking these questions to are both willing and able to answer these questions. And I think this is a very serious position for you, because the people probably, or at least the solution-based,
so you're supposed to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think these people are both willing and both able, and in planning this is not always the circumstance. So maybe you could, so this is the first point, and maybe you could help with this willing and able issue. And the second one relates to the communicative rationale and the issues of skill.
Can we separate them? I'll answer the first question first.
Okay.
So the first one is, am I assuming that they're willing to answer this?
Willing and able.
Or able.
Yeah.
That's it. The point is not that they answer it, the point is that they hear the question. And the same is with therapy clients. I can work with clients that don't answer my questions. I have a training exercise where people don't answer, and I keep asking my questions. The point is, I make it clear to them, if I work with urban planners, I make it clear we have 60 minutes together, 2 hours. How will you benefit from these 2 hours if these 2 hours work out well? And I make it clear that I need their involvement. From then on, it's up to them as well as up to me to make it interesting. Yeah. But I don't assume that they answer these questions or answer them as explicitly. Even I don't have to understand their answers, which is a very strange thing. But bringing the question in is actually directing their attention. Whatever they do with directing that attention is up to them. I trust them to, do wise stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't make an ethical judgment about what they do next. It's different when you're a planner. In a therapist, you have a different mandate. As a planner, you never have control of the whole context. So you use this kind of stuff in an opportunistic way. Whenever you hear a client voice something, that's where they say what they don't want, you ask what you want instead. Whenever you ask one question, you get one answer. You're trained to ask more answers. And you elicit better descriptions so you can continue to work. But you're also able, and that's what another colleague said, we were able to better explain why we were asking these questions and why we need their cooperation. So we made it clear to them that what the implications were if they were not cooperating. So then we gave them a choice. Either you cooperate in that way or not, but that's fine. We'll work with whatever you do, but know what the consequences are.
I think this is what makes it difficult and special. And the example I have in my mind was the decentralization of the healthcare system. That there are municipal agencies that can't really handle the stress they're in, that it's being moved on towards children of parents who sometimes not even live in the same country. So I think that asking these questions might help in getting a better grip on the situation. I think so within the communicative paradigm, I think these are very nice departure points. But is there more? We also use this to empower the people. Do you think?
Definitely. I mean, the question, but it's a bit like giving a medicine. Or using the autopoietic power of your body to use something. If you use antibiotics too often, your own responsiveness gets challenged and gets lazy. It's a bit like that. That's why I talk about local wisdom cultivating. I trust that wisdom is there because you're living your life, and I have no control over that. But that's the assumption. I mean, and it's what we try with every single conversation we have. So I don't make any statements in general about whether this is true or not, but it's something we try, definitely. And it was called brief therapy because in the States at that time when it was developed, psychoanalysis was very popular. So a lot of people with a lot of problems couldn't get therapy because it was very expensive. So these guys wondered, what can we, like with Occam's razor, what can we get rid of? And they noticed that it wasn't about studying their questions, it was about continuously asking the client what works. And apparently, asking the client what works and what's wanted is something that works, which is really strange, because they got wiser about their own wisdom. And what worked for one client never works for another client. The project You Saw and Get, one of the participants asked me to do exactly the same thing for another project. I almost screwed it up by doing exactly the same thing. And I wasn't listening anymore to, okay, what's going to be useful here?
I I think this was mentioned on the first day as well. If you look for success factors and only to impose them exactly on another situation, that won't work.
Yeah, you stop asking for it.
Okay. Other questions?
Nobody's daring to
You
ask
wait.
questions anymore.
Mrs. Factory, you did something like this.
Well,
You did?
completely.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe I can ask a question. I'm familiar with what you're talking about, and I see the potential and the usefulness of it. On the other hand, I'm wondering how it translates to planning, because, of course, there are some intuitive differences. Like if you're working with a person on their life, it's really confined, in a sense that the actions of this, but you are talking to the one in charge of doing all the actions.
Okay, yeah.
In planning, I think the difficulty is that you have a lot of different
Yeah.
perspectives
Where you're going.
simultaneously together,
Mhm.
where control is
Yeah.
hard to define. So, just
What we challenge in such conversations with people in urban planning is also a better understanding of what they can do and cannot do. It's driving you insane if you come with a wish that you cannot execute. So you cannot make progress by restating, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. My job is to get you to state a better description that allows you, in your position, with your options, to make progress. So it's about renegotiating your own goal in such a way that you can actually make progress. So, and yeah, that's basically it. But is it useful all the time? I don't know. I have no clue. But the basic philosophy behind this is basically that they also say solution-focused brief therapy doesn't fix anything. It's almost an ethical stance, an ethical practice in asking for what works and be very, very critical about what you hear and the way it's phrased, and then give it back to you instead of interpreting.
I think in that sense it relates to the condition ID, in the sense that it positions a person and what was called before the freedom of acting. And I think this is really the key, that you are aware of what is possible within your range of action and what is not, and how this affects is then to be seen, how this plays out.
Yeah, you have to try it. It's continuous trial and error.
Okay, that's it. Thank you. I think that was the end of the fifth session. Now we go to lunch, to the stronghold of the working